Hello and welcome to Solitaire Gaming, where we usually play games with 0 players. That is, we usually play bots or AI against one another, and humans are not typically allowed in our games. However, we're making an exception in this video. We're actually going to play a solitaire game today. So we're going to play Star Trek Chrono-Trek, and this is a solitaire variant that I made, called the Chrono-Yashi Snafu. And I made this for, these are the rules, by the way. This document can be found on Board Game Geek. I'll put a link to this. I'll put a link in the description of this video in case you're interested. You want to pick up these rule sets and play this on your own. But in any case, I made this variant for the Solo Mode Design Contest 2023 on Board Game Geek, which is going on right now. And so I thought I'd make a video to show how the solitaire version plays, in case anyone's interested in learning the rule set and playing this game themselves. So in this video I'm going to show how to play this solo variant of Star Trek Chrono-Trek. Okay, here we go. So to set up the game, we remove all of the action and power action cards from the deck. It's these pink and blue cards. They're all removed. They're not used in the solo version of this game. And then we set up the timeline in the same way as you do for the normal game. So it's rows of nine cards and four rows of 9 cards each, in sequential order. Then we take the identity file cards, or the ID cards, as I usually call them, and we'll shuffle those up and deal 9 of them in another row under the timeline. The rest of the cards are shuffled together. They include these 5 different types of cards. We have inverters, these yellow cards, fractures, these dark red cards, artifacts, these green cards, assignments, also green, and event cards. So those get all shuffled together, and then we'll draw 5 cards off of that deck to form our hand. So I've drawn 5 cards off the deck. If any events are drawn during this process, then they're set aside and a new card is drawn until there are 5 cards in hand that are not events. And then any events are shuffled back into the deck. So we cannot start the game with any events in our hand. So the game is set up. Now we have a hand of 5 cards here. The remaining deck is here. I've left a little bit of room for a discard pile. We have the 9 ID cards dealt out here, and the remaining ID cards here. And the timeline is set up as usual. So the idea behind this game is, well, it's based on the solo rules for the original Chrononauts, but it's modified to work for this version of the game, which is substantially different than the original Chrononauts. So the basic idea is we're trying to send these people home. And they're all from different variants of the timeline. So they have different home worlds, home times, I guess we should say, that they want to return home to. So, for example, let's take this card. This is Emperor Core. Okay, so in order to send Emperor Core home, we need to satisfy these 3 requirements. So the timeline needs to be changed in the first 2 ways. So the first way is 1945. We need the alternate history that the Nazis win World War II. So, of course, the timeline as it is according to real Star Trek history. Some of which is real Earth history for a while, but then obviously it goes into the future. Okay, so Allied forces win World War II. That would have to be flipped to the alternate history that the Nazis win World War II. Okay, so that would satisfy the first part of Emperor Core's requirements. And the second one is a fracture would have to be played on 2293. Klingons conquer Earth. So let's see, that's here. Kittimer Accord sign, that's 2293. Okay, so that would have to be changed to its alternate history. Klingons remain hostile. And then a fracture would have to be placed on that, which we'd have to find in the deck somewhere in the course of play to put on that. Okay, and then the final thing we need is the Agonizer. So that's an artifact. So that would have to be played to the table at some point during the course of the game in order to send Emperor Kor home. So if all three of these things are satisfied at the same time, then Emperor Kor can be discarded. He's sent home. Okay, and then the object of the game is to send home all 9 of our characters. There are a few ways to lose. One is that some state of the timeline might make it so that we lose. For example, if the first anomaly is flipped over, it says game over right on it. Life doesn't find a way. Okay, so that would be game over if that were flipped. With Q in our timeline, he actually wants that to happen. So that means that he has to be the last ID sent home. So we have to make sure everybody else goes home first, because that will trigger game end. So he would go home right as the game ends, and we would win as long as all the other IDs were home as well. Okay, so that's one way we could lose. Something happens in the timeline that makes it so that we lose. Another way is that we no longer have any playable cards in our hand, so it's possible that your hand just gets sort of jammed up with unplayable cards. That's a real danger in this version of the game. You only have 5 cards in your hand. There's no way to get more than 5 cards in your hand during the game. So, for example, right now, Data's Head is not a playable card. Artifacts can't be played unless there's an assignment on the table that has that artifact listed, and right now there are no assignments played at the table. So this card cannot be played. It's just stuck in our hand. These cards, however, can be played. These are all inverters. It's possible to play them and use them. Okay, so one way we could lose is if our hand just gets jammed up with unplayable cards. Another way to lose is you just run out of options. If we run out of cards in this deck and we run out of playable cards in our hand that can actually do something, we still have IDs left that haven't gone home, then we'd also lose. Okay, let me start playing this game, and I'll show you how it works. Okay, so looking at the IDs that I have in play, I see that there's 2 of them that require fractures, these dark red colors. Of course, Emperor Kor, who we've already talked about, and the founders here also. So I'm going to have to find those fractures at some point, or what's highly likely, some of these IDs will get discarded and replaced by others. That's the nature of this game. Wacky things happen, so it's likely that some of these cards will end up getting discarded and replaced. Okay, but I should think about how I can send some of these IDs home, at least. Okay, I have Data's head in my hand, and Data, of course, would like his own head when he goes home. Makes sense. So that if I could get Data's head played to the table, again, I can't do that right now because I don't have the necessary assignment in play, but if I could get that played to the table, that would be closer to getting that. Otherwise, there's nothing that I could do right now that would easily send anyone home. These 2 require fractures. Everybody needs either a fracture or some artifact. Okay, and obviously Q, again, can't send him home to the end. Okay, so what I can do is start working on some aspects of this. So maybe this one, Tribble Homeworld, is purchased. I could make an alternate 2289. So let me just see if anyone else needs 2289, which right now is, let's see, where is it? There, Tribble Homeworld Annihilated. Okay, so if anyone needs that, then maybe I don't want to do that. Oh, actually, look over here. Both the Holographic Doctor, Triple Homeworld purchased, and Cyrano Jones, Triple Homeworld purchased, want that change. So actually we have 3 characters here that want the Triple Homeworld to be purchased rather than destroyed. The Holographic Doctor, Cyrano Jones, and Arnie Darwin. Okay, so let's do that. Alright, so I'm going to play an inverter. I don't want to play the one with Q yet because because that one says you also flip the latest anchor point or anomaly to the side you prefer. Well, as it turns out, the only way to send Q home is to make sure that that final card of the anomaly is flipped, and that, of course, causes life to never happen. And the only way to make that work is actually this inverter has to be played to flip an anchor point to its other side, but doing that obviously is a little bit dangerous because it puts us closer to losing the game. So we don't want to play that unless we have to, unless we're stuck. We don't have any other inverters to play. So I'm going to keep that in my hand. In fact, I'm going to put it over here so I don't accidentally play it when I don't want to. So I'm just going to play a regular old inverter here. It says flip any linchpin. So the linchpin I'm going to flip, I want to make sure we'll have the result of making the Triple Homeworld not be annihilated but rather purchased. So there's 2 ways I can do it. Either one of these 2 changed to their alternate side would accomplish it. Okay, so I could flip this one. Ferengi ship crashes at Roswell. Could change that one. Or I could change this one. K7 station overrun with triples. Okay, so I got to think about which one I want to change. Well, as it turns out, Arnie Darwin also wants the Klingons to remain hostile. And Emperor Kor wants that to happen, and also to play the fracture on 2293 that makes the Klingons conquer Earth. So I actually want both of these 2 to flip. So therefore, I should change the timeline to make it such that K7 station is not overrun with triples anymore, but rather a bomb damages K7 station. Okay, now that I've done that, that has some ripple effects, C1 and C2, which are exactly these 2 cards. So now, instead of the triple Homeworld being annihilated, it's now purchased. Instead of the Kittimer Accords, we now have the Klingons remain hostile. Okay, so now I have only 4 cards in my hand, and one of the important points of this game is that you do not have to draw cards. Drawing cards is actually somewhat dangerous in this game because there are events in here that have sort of devastating effects upon the state of the game, so you don't really necessarily want to draw cards if you can avoid it. However, in this early stage of the game, I need to find all kinds of artifacts, so I have to draw cards. So I might as well just go ahead and draw a card. Oh boy, I drew an event. Okay, when an event is drawn, you have to do what it says immediately. So this one says, all players must reveal all fracture cards they are holding. Any that can be played must be played immediately. All others are to be discarded. All players then draw cards to replace the cards they had. Okay, so most events are just played exactly the way they're written. However, some events have some special rules. So in this case, we do everything that it says, except that last sentence, all players then draw cards to replace the cards they had. We don't have to do that. Like I just said, we can have empty spots in our hand. That's okay in the Solitaire version. Okay, but we still have to play or discard every fracture in our hand. Fortunately, we don't have any, so this event actually didn't do anything. This was a very fortuitous time to get this event. If it came at a time when we had fractures in our hand that we didn't want to play yet, we'd have been stuck. Okay, so I'm going to discard that, didn't do anything, and I'm going to draw another card. Okay, I got another artifact. Okay, so now I have these 2 artifacts kind of clogging up my hand. Again, I can't play artifacts onto the table until there are assignments that list those artifacts on the table, and I haven't seen any assignments yet. I'll show you how that works when I finally find one. So the only thing I can do is play more inverters to change the timeline. Another aspect of this game worth noting is it's not possible to simply discard a card just to get out of your hand. Okay, so that's an important aspect of the game. You have to play the cards in order to get them out of your hand. So I can't just discard the inverter without doing anything, and I actually have to use it to change the timeline in some way. But of course it's possible to play an inverter to change the timeline and then play another inverter to change it back. You could do that. We just burn 2 inverters. Okay, so I'm going to look at the IDs again and see what kind of change I want to make to the timeline with another inverter. So looking again at the IDs, I noted that both the founders and Data want the Federation to be founded in 2161. However, let's see. Yeah, so 2161, Federation founded, I want to be careful to keep that from flipping. And it flips if 2 or more of these are flipped over. So I want to be careful that I don't flip 2 or more of those. Or that if I do, I have a way to turn it back to make sure that the founders and Data can still be sent home. Basically, at this point in the game, I want to keep my options as open as possible because I don't know what cards are going to come up. So I don't want to change the timeline too drastically to favor any one of these characters too much. So I want to keep the Federation founded for now because that's needed for 2 of our cards. However, Core here still wants the Nazis to win World War II, which would require the 1945 card be flipped, which means we'd have to have Edith Keeler not be killed by the car, but rather saved. But that's one of the one of the 4 that could flip the Federation founded. So I could flip that one, but then I'd have to be careful not to flip any of the others to make sure the Federation is still founded. Okay, this is the kind of thinking they have to go through in this game. So the choices can be quite difficult to make. Okay, so let's see. I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to change it so that Edith Keeler is not killed by the car. Okay, so we're going to discard an inverter. Edith Keeler is now saved. She's not hit by the car, and so the ripples here will be A3, A5, and B5. Okay, so first thing is the Nazis win World War II. Instead of astronauts orbiting the moon, we get the first eugenics wars begin. And B5 is Federation founded, but that only flips if 2 or more of these are flipped, so that stays as it is for now. Okay, so that helps make Emperor Core happy. That's another part of his ID. Okay, so I'm going to draw another card again at this point in the game. I don't have to draw cards ever, but at this point in the game, I need to because I need several things. I need to find these fractures for one thing. I need to find all these artifacts, so I need to draw more cards. Terran Empire founded. Okay, unfortunately, neither of the IDs that we have want that fracture, so it'd be nice if I can find a way to get rid of that. Okay, right now there's, again, no way to just discard something. So the only way to get it out of my hand is either to play it onto the timeline, or if I complete an assignment, that's also allows me to discard a card. But we haven't seen any assignments yet. Okay, so the only thing I could do here is play another inverter. So I'm going to play this inverter. This time I'm going to go for Let's see. I think I want to do the Dominion War, 2375. Do I want to do that? Because the founders, they need to put an alternate, they need to put a fracture there, Federation conquered by Dominion. So we need to have that flipped at some point, and I don't think it does. It doesn't seem to affect anybody else. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to make it so that Cisco turns down the DS9 assignment, and that means that Cisco and Dax do not discover the wormhole. So the Bajorans still await arrival of the emissary. And the Dominion War turns into the Federation's Civil War. Okay, so that's that inverter, and I'm going to draw another card. Okay, it's another fracture, Atomic Wars, Scorch Earth. Again, that stinks. It's not a fracture I actually want to play, so it's just clogging up my hand. So I basically have two choices here. I could play Q snaps his fingers, but again, if I do that, since Q is one of my IDs, I have to play it to flip an anchor point, and that puts me all the closer to making it so that life never arrives on Earth. So that would be bad. I don't want that to happen too soon, because I want that to happen when Q is the only remaining ID. If Q is still an ID at all by that time, there are ways where they could be changed. Okay, so I don't really want to play this yet. I want to avoid it as much as I can. The other option is I could play this fracture to the timeline. Atomic Wars Scorch Earth. It's a 1968 fracture. And right now, 1968 is on its alternative side. First eugenics wars begin. So I could play the fracture to there. Not because I want it for any reason. None of my IDs care about that. But it's a way to get it out of my hand. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to play that to 1968. Okay, just like the regular game, any fracture, the timeline after the fracture is inaccessible. So I actually can't send home any character that has a time listed after 1968 while that fracture is on the table. So I need to get rid of that fracture eventually. Right now I'm playing it just to get it out of my hand. Alright, I'm going to draw another card. Okay, finally an assignment. Good. Whenever an assignment is drawn, it's just immediately played to the table. But all of the text on the assignment is completely ignored. So we don't draw two cards. We don't do step 2, right? If both these artifacts are in play, you may choose to discard one and draw 5 more cards. Okay, so we ignore both of those things, just to pretend those aren't there. Instead, all this does is makes it possible to play these 2 cards to the table and get them out of our hand. That's all assignments do. So I like to put assignments over here, off to the side, and now that just tells me phaser and tricorder can be played to the table as well. And I happen to have the phaser in my hand, so that can also be played now. Just put it over here. Okay. If I can manage to find the tricorder as well, then I can discard this assignment, and that allows me to discard a card from my hand. Also, whenever you send a character home, whenever an ID is discarded, you can also discard a card from your hand. And those are the only ways that you can discard cards from your hand. Okay, and looking at my IDs, I see that Tasha Yar here requires a phaser. Okay. And she also wants the war with the Klingons to continue in 2364. And she wants Picard to take command. Okay, so Picard takes command is correct right now. The timeline does say that. It's right there. Picard takes command, 2364A. However, the war with the Klingons, 2364B, that is not the case. Okay, so in order to send Tasha Yar home, we would need to flip this, and we need to get rid of that earlier fracture. So we can't send her home if anything on her timeline is after that fracture. Okay, so if we can fix that fracture and flip this card, then we can send Tashi-Yar home because the phaser is already in play there. Okay, so that's what I'm going to try to do next. Okay, well, again, I still don't want to play this inverter if I can help it. So I'm going to draw a card. The Agonizer. Okay, I don't have a way to play that. I don't have an assignment that lists that, so it just has to go to my hand. And I'm going to draw another card. Okay, the Guardian of Forever, another artifact. The Guardian of Forever has this text here. It says it counts as an inverter. During your turn, you may discard it to flip any linchpin. However, this card, and there's another one too like it, I can't remember which card it is, but you can only use it as an inverter if it has been played to the table already as an artifact. Then you can discard it from there if you like. Okay, so you can't just play it out of your hand as an inverter. Alright, well, looks like I'm going to have to play Q Snaps His Fingers. I have no choice at this point. So I'm going to play this to flip a linchpin and also flip the latest anchor point anomaly to the side you prefer. Again, in order to send Q home, you've got to flip an anchor point to the other side. In any case, right now, that's the only thing I could do because they're all on the anchor point side. Okay, so we're going to play this. Might as well flip this anchor point first. So the Devron anomaly has begun. And I want to change this card so that we can potentially send Tashi-Yar home. Okay, so Enterprise C Destroyed is now going to change to Enterprise C Retreats, and that ripples to C8, just this one. And so the war with the Klingons continues. Again, I can't send Tashi-Yar home yet because even though we have everything on her card, there is a fracture in the timeline that comes before one of the dates on her card, actually both dates on her card. So we can't send her home yet. We have to fix that fracture. So I'm going to draw another card here. Okay, good, it's an inverter, so we're not stuck. We can still do stuff. So I'm going to use this inverter to fix that fracture. So Daniels sent me. Go to the discard. And so we need to change the timeline to match this. We need to counteract this. So we need to change Edith Keeler so that she does die now. Okay, so A3, that goes back. This is going to get flipped, so that means the fracture goes away. That flips back. Okay, and the fracture goes to the discard. Okay, so now we can send Tashi-Yar home. There are no fractures before any time listed on her ID card. Picard takes command is true. The war with the Klingons continues is true. And we have the phaser on the table. Okay, so that means we can discard Tashi-Yar. So she just goes to the discard pile. And now, whenever we discard an assignment or an ID card, we can actually discard a card from our hand. So I'm going to get rid of Terran Empire Founded. It's a fracture we don't need in this game. So, to the discard pile it goes, and that frees up a space in our hand. Well, there's nothing I can really do with cards in my hand, so I'm going to have to draw more cards. Another assignment. Good. So that immediately goes to the board. Again, we ignore all the text on it. This has both Porthos and Janeway's favorite coffee cup on it. Unfortunately, I don't have either of those artifacts in my hand, so I'll draw another card. Humpback Whales. Okay, well, we only have one spot left in our hand. I'm going to have to draw another card. There's nothing else I can do. And if that card is an artifact I can't play or a fracture I can't play, then there's just going to be nothing I can do. I'm just going to be stuck. So let's see what happens. Well, it's a fracture. Okay, Federation is simulated by the Borg, 2366. Yeah, that's here, isn't it? 2366. Yeah, so this has not been flipped to its alternate timeline, so that means that this fracture is unplayable right now. All of these cards are unplayable right now. So this is what we call a Chrono-Yashi Snafu. It's an unwinnable situation. And that happens all the time in this solo game. So it's quite hard. to actually win this game. I've done it. It can be done. I know it can be done. But it's difficult. A lot of times it ends just like this. Your hand just gets clogged up, and there's really just nothing you can do. So you're stuck. Okay, so there you have it. I lost this game. I managed to send one ID home, but that's it. There's nothing more I can do. I can't play any of these cards, so the game ends. Okay, there you have it. That's the game. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you're interested in the rules for this game, please follow the link in the description where you can find the rules and give it a go for yourself. I'd love any feedback you might have on it, whether you can actually play the game or just from this playthrough. If you see anything that you think maybe I could improve, I'd love to hear about it. Like I said, this is part of the 2023 Solo Mode Design Contest, which is going on right now. There's lots of other interesting solo mode designs. If you're interested in checking that out, I'll also have a link to information about that design contest and other designs that are in the contest, so you can check those out as well. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.